my experience with Ekhart Tolle. Yeah, nice. So maybe a lot of you don't know that when I was younger, I was a big Tolle fan. Yeah, and as I'm older, I'm still a Tolle fan, but I mean, like, when I was younger, I would listen to his book all the time, as I fell asleep, when I got home from work, when I was studying, when I was on holiday, like constantly. So this was back in the day before it was easy to get downloads off the internet. This is like maybe 2002, so I think his book came out in 2000, The Power of Now. To 2002 to maybe 2006, but I still will listen to him every so often, especially if I can't sleep, or I sometimes listen to his German, him speaking about the subject in German. Yeah, and yeah, he's massive influence on my spiritual path, massive. So before I talk about Ekhart Tolle and my experience with him, I'm first of all going to talk about like what is non-duality, just like the way that I express non-duality, just so we can have like a basis for the talk, and then I'll go on to read some quotes from Ekhart Tolle and talk about it from my experience. Yeah, so what is non-duality? So Ekhart Tolle, I think, was the first non-duality teacher that I ever came across. However, when I first met him, I didn't know what non-duality was. At all. So I was already into Buddhism by this point and other spiritual teachers. But Ekhart Tolle was really radical compared to the Buddhist group that I was into. So in the Buddhist group that I was into, we didn't really talk about no self. We talked about consciousness and that everything's consciousness. But we never really talked about the separation between the personal self and the big consciousness. It kind of was one thing, and you became enlightened. And your consciousness became enlightened. And I never really heard no self before. And like when I got involved with Eckhart, it was really radical. And in the end, I had to make a choice between non-duality and what Eckhart Tolle teaching and Buddhism. Like the Buddhist group at that point weren't willing or ready to accept non-duality. So yeah, it was like a super radical teaching. And now, ironically, if you put it all together, you would say that I'm more radical than Eckhart Tolle, but I remember it being so radical. So let me just go back to what my interpretation is of non-duality, and I feel like it's deeply related to the way that Eckhart Tolle would see it, except he's not so explicit with the way he expresses non-duality. But if you really listen, you really hear like extreme non-duality in the way he speaks. So non-dual understanding is often a precursor to awakening experience from my experience. So you learn non-duality and then something happens. It's like there is a collapse that happens, and non-duality is the teaching that that there isn't a separate entity experiencing this reality. And that's so full on, but to me that seems really natural and normal. It's even weird kind of trying to teach this, because it feels like everyone must and should understand this, and that it's like the fundamental of experience. So I have to kind of switch my brain to try to think how to explain it. So when we're growing up, we're always taught that we are an identity, and that identity is interacting with the world. So for me, I was called Lisa. I loved drama. I loved the arts at school. I enjoyed playtime at school. I didn't like going to school. I was fairly happy when I was younger. It changed in teenage years, but before that I was fairly happy, easygoing, plumpy. I know that's weird, but it is an identity that we identify with, like I am plumpy. Bit of a nerd, bit geeky. I loved surveillance families. If you're English, British, or maybe American, or maybe that's all over the world, these things called surveillance families, it was just like my thing. And we begin to believe that that is who we are. So I can like say all these things that this body liked, and what my imagination of the past is, and we make this like story. We weave together an identity out of that story, like different things, different memories, different images, different looks, and it becomes like an entity that is constantly being narrated inside the brain, or we don't really know where it is, but there is this narration like, I am good, I am bad, they are bad, they did wrong, why didn't they do this, they should have done that, I should have done this, I should have done that, I'm going here, I'm going there, I'm walking up a hill. And there is this narration going on, making it feel like there is a separate entity that's experiencing a separate world. And that's just like the way it is, I think, for 99.9% of humans. That there is somebody experiencing this world, and it becomes a physiological experience, like that it really, like the body kind of holds itself in a way where it really feels like there is something experiencing. Whereas non-duality is pointing to like not to-ness, that there isn't actually something experiencing this world. But that isn't intellectual. Like in the beginning it starts off as intellectual, and then there is this awakening and it becomes experiential, but it's not mental, so you can't really think about it. It's that right now there is speaking happening, but there is nobody speaking. We can name a character, there is Lisa speaking, but the experiential feeling is there is speaking happening, and also a Lisa character appearing, but it's not the experiencer of this. So the experiencer of this is undefined, is infinite, and you could say is no thing. So there's experiencing happening, but we can't find the experiencer. We can't say, oh, it's inside this head, or it's inside the computer, or inside the walls. There is, when you really have these energetic shifts, it's really seen that there is not a thing experiencing. But part of the functioning of this body is it arises with a character. So it's not about getting rid of the character. The body is always going to be conditioned, and there's going to be a narrative of a story that goes with this body. But it's always changing the character. It's always evolving. It's not a solid thing, but it comes with this body. But the energetic shift is that is no longer the experiencer, and this isn't an intellectual. It's not an intellectual knowing like, aha, and there is somebody or something narrating that and telling that, which is ultimately confusing. Like, I don't know how you communicate that. There is like a deep knowing experientially right here, right now, that there isn't a limitation on experiencing. It doesn't even go into a thought though, it's just the way it is. That this experience is not two. that there is no difference between the experiencer and the experience, but the experiencer can never be found. It's just oneness, it's not two-ness. So there is like this understanding that happens, and during the understanding of non-duality, there can be like a balancing out of illusion. Because when you believe you are this entity inside of the body, lots of illusions unfold, lots of false ideas and belief systems, and then they become feelings, and then the hormones change, and the chemicals change, and the neural pathways change, because it keeps narrating the story and telling this story which isn't actually true. So that tends to settle down, but also what happens is there is this this breakdown in thinking of being able to hold on to something. It's you could say it's a little bit like taking mushrooms or hallucinogenics. It's like you lose the center point, except it's not as extreme as that. But there is some part in the brain or the body, or we don't know what it is, that cannot hold on so tightly anymore to a person, to ideas, to thoughts. So when somebody says like the world is all black, and it is black, and that's the way it is, like there's another part that just doesn't really care about these types of things anymore. There's like a collapsing of this idea that what you're actually looking for is thought bound, thing bound, future bound. That the ideas become looser and looser and looser, and in that there is a shift that happens. We don't know if this shift is in the brain or what happens in this shift, but it's an energetic shift, and many people have spoken about it. Ekhart Tolle speaks very clearly about it in the beginning of The Power Now, The Power of Now. And you have these like oceanic oneness experiences. And these are experiences, but they shift something fundamentally. So you can have the experience so extremely that you can't move. Like some people, Ramana Maharshi, for years couldn't really move or do anything and went into silence, because it's really monumental to the system. So, and what happens in these awakening experiences is that the consciousness which is tied up in the person, so the consciousness and the person feel like they're one thing. So I am a conscious person inside this body, stops being entangled in that, and then the consciousness goes back to being where it's always been, which is in everything. So the experiencer, so the experience is that the experiencer is not inside the body or outside the body. It's not in a thing or not in a thing. You could say nothing or everything. It's the fundamental sense of being. To this moment, this is no longer being experienced from somewhere. So there is seeming watching from this body, but the fundamental feeling of being you, beyond you, feels unlimited and unbound, even though there is a looking from this angle. That's really bonkers. And in this awakening, it profoundly shifts the body-mind mechanism. And this is what I feel like a lot of spiritual teachers talk about. Also, some spiritual teachers don't talk about this. They talk about other things as awakening, and that's the way it is, life. Folks, life doesn't make sense. Everyone has different opinions. So I feel this is what the Buddha talked about, what Jesus talked about, like people that are having near-death experiences, is there is this oceanic love experience of oneness, and then there is a profound shift in the body-mind mechanism anymore, and that looking is no longer bound to the body anymore. However, then it can get expressed in all types of different ways. Like I hear some people having had that experience and then they interpret it as like the Holy Spirit is speaking through them, or like all their Kundalini energy is all their chakras are open, all different types of ways, but I can kind of hear the basis of the experience. And I don't even care anymore about people's different interpretation of it. It does seem that sometimes people can have small ones of these and it doesn't really change much, or they then go back into deep suffering or illusion. To me, the most important part of that is afterwards the mind coming to a place where it really doesn't know jack shit, which is kind of ironic. It's like a reset, like you go back to being a baby. You're like, I don't know anything. There is nothing I can hold on to in this life. Like, it's kind of, you come back to this mystery. And then dependent on the way the body's been conditioned, it will speak about it in different ways. So I speak about it from a non-duality perspective because that's the way this body's been conditioned. I don't feel like it's more right anymore. I'm just not prepared to go into that. Who knows? So, and people can get to that place in the mind where the mind stops holding from things. I can see from yoga practice, from service practice, from neurology, like understand the brain, from psychology, so many different ways. So let's go to Eckhart Tolle. So in the beginning of The Power of Now, he explains this big big bang experience. So he's in deep suffering, and then there is I think he hears something which tells him to surrender or something, and there is a surrender, and then suddenly there's a huge energetic shift, and then the bird song is all that he can hear, and it's really beautiful, the detail of the bird song. And then for years after that, he was just walking around sitting on benches for a lot of the time. What happened here wasn't the same, but had similarities. I wasn't in deep suffering at that point, but in the previous month, I had lost my life, which I had. My life had dramatically changed, but I've been through so much spirituality and spiritual training that I wasn't going into thoughts or fears about it. So they were coming up. I was really intensely feeling them, but there wasn't like a getting involved in that. And then something happened. I don't know why really, but this collapsing happened in my mind where the brain or the body couldn't hold on to this illusion anymore. And it was actually very peaceful prior and after when it happened here. Like I was just sitting there, and then it was like slowly the looking expanded into everything, and it was really oceanically, amazingly beautiful. I was quite vulnerable at the time though, in the sense that I was in Bali all by myself. So I walked around like a child again, without really self-awareness or any self-awareness, and with my cognitive abilities like collapsing in a way. But I survived. But I now look back, I'm like, far out. That could have been a disaster, but it wasn't, because that was the way it went. And this to me is the awakening. And then what is left after that is this deep knowing, or this intimacy with everything, which isn't intellectual. Yeah. So now we'll go on to some quotes from Ekhart Tolle. So if I continue my story with Ekhart Tolle, so I met him, I didn't meet him actually ever. I nearly met him in like 2004. I got invited to a talk, but I can't remember what happened. It didn't happen. I don't think. Oh God. Did I go? There was something in 2004 that happened. I went to this group, like this Ekhart Tolle group. Sorry, my memory is so bad, you'd think I'd remember that. But I don't. But I used to go to the Eckhart Tolle group, and I don't know where I got all his videos from. Like I'd watch all his videos, and And if it wasn't for his teaching, I wouldn't have then met Neo-Advaita, Tony Parsons, another teacher I love called Nathan Gill, and Ramesh Balsekar, Gangaji, like all these other beautiful teachers. So, because from Buddhism, it was just so far away. It was like the bridge. Yes, the bridge. So let's go to some quotes of him. So the past has no power over the present moment. So this is something very common for him to say. And you've got to remember, like, people that aren't into non-duality, like, that's a really profound statement. The past has no power over the present moment, because to most people in our society, they are seeing themselves as somebody moving through time. So everything they are now is because of time. So past, and what they've done in the past, is of the utmost importance. So really, you might not be able to remember the radicalness of this statement, but it is a really radical statement. The past. So that means, like, if you were in a car crash yesterday and lost a leg, that has no power over this present moment. I mean, that's like got immense depth. I mean, it's really profound what he says. Yeah, just let me make sure my sound is. Yeah, so, and it's true, because the past does not exist now. So you might have this leg which is totally destroyed in this moment, but the past doesn't actually exist now and never has existed. It only ever is an imagination. So what's happening now is there's pain and there's no leg, and there might be immense grief and sadness about that. But the past, should I have done something different, or this happened, or it was their fault, like all these thoughts that you typically believe have no weight. Your freedom is always who you are, which is this moment, even with pain. That's really radical compared to what society believes. I can also see how people can abuse these types of things. It's, a disaster for somebody whose personality is not balanced, because they could be really abusive to their partner, and then they could tell themselves the narrative, the past doesn't exist, I never did that, and not apologize. So I can see the dangers of it, which is the same with everything. And that's just something to bring into conversation. It doesn't mean that we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's still very profound and can really create depth in pondering this. So some changes look negative on the surface, but you will soon realize that space is being created in your life for something new to emerge. Yeah, that's, I mean, to me, that's like a really basic quote. I'm not meaning to be rude to Ekhart Tolle, but it wouldn't have been when I first met Eckhart. So it's like, if you took it to the most extreme again of somebody having a car crash, like some changes might look negative on the surface, you'll soon realize they're creating space. Or if somebody treats you really badly, I wouldn't see it like that. The primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation, but your thoughts about it. So I wouldn't disagree with that. The only thing that I would also elaborate on is that We don't know what thoughts are, and are they really separate from physiology of the body? So are they, like, we don't know, like, thoughts, feelings, hormones, like all these different things. So it's like, to me, I see the whole body as like a circular system. So if you have like lots of negative thoughts, then you're going to produce particular hormones in the body, which will then set off other triggers and feelings in the body. So if you have anxiety thoughts, you might then release adrenaline, and then you might have stress feeling, and then there might be more thoughts generated. So I wouldn't say it's just thoughts, but I would say the overall belief in yourself and in thoughts and in feelings. Like, so the way that I would say it, not saying it's better than Ekhart Tolle, it's just the way this gets expressed, is that nothing that you think, feel, or experience is truth or reality. But that's like really extreme. Like, I say that to people 1,000 times, and it's like, blah. Like, so nothing you're experiencing is reality. Whereas when you believe yourself to be someone, you're always taking your thoughts and who you are in the situation and life to be really serious and really real. Yeah. Okay, let's go for a nice long quote. Give up defining yourself to yourself or to others. You won't die. You will come to life. And don't be concerned with how others define you. When they define you, they are limiting themselves, so it's their problem. Whenever you interact with people, don't be there primarily as a function or a role, but as a field of conscious presence. You can only lose something that you have, but you cannot lose something that you are. I mean, that's so deep. I mean, the way I would go in is I would want to say, who is the person that's giving up defining themselves? Like, even the idea of the person that's defining themselves. But he says that in other sentences in the book. You know, it's also really beautiful that he's more direct about it. Like, it's not something that arises here, so I don't even ever think to talk about that I don't go around defining myself. I go around defining myself with emotions and feelings in order to have more healthy relationships. So I will go around and say, you know, if I feel afraid now, or if I feel upset about something. But in general, it's not a narrative that I'm interested in. It's something to help me and aid me in relationships, but I also don't even hold that tightly to it. It's just to communicate better. So there's also a defining of my psychology. And the more that I defined it in detail, like, the more helpful it is to get on better with people and to stop doing silly things that we're all prone to. But I don't really define that as me. It's just a functioning of this body. It's just a helpful tool. But there's not a narrative. I remember when I was younger, like, this narrative of who I was, and always having an image in my head of who I was. Like, holding, it was so tight, this image. And, you know, when I was interacting with people, it would be like this image interacting with another image, and these thoughts and feelings. You might not even notice this beginning to fall away. It sort of slips away, and it's like anything. Like, when the stone isn't in the shoe, you don't notice, but when the stone is in the shoe, you notice. And it's so beautiful. When they define you, they are limiting themselves. So they can hold a light definition. So like, when I'm in a relationship with people, if somebody is acting in a painful way, I might define their psychology to help me navigate that situation, or when I'm working with someone. But generally, there is no definition of them. They are free. What's experiencing each other is oneness. And that is who they truly are. That's what they always are. And even when I define their psychology, that can always change in every moment. These little chemical reactions happen and then they're gone. That's not who they are. And do you remember how you always used to be like, that's who they are, and they're an asshole, and they're this, and they're that? Beep, 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 beep. What the difficulty with this type of teaching is what it can do. And so some people that are very averse to these kind of more prescriptive teachings, it sounds like what he's doing is prescriptive teachings, but actually, is it really prescriptive teachings? Is it just a way of pointing something out? But sometimes people have great aversion to these prescriptive teachings because they have this immense terror and fear around being a failure or around doing something wrong. And so when they hear this, they instantly have to reject it and go to like extreme neo-Advaita non-duality because it gives them terror, the idea that there is something wrong with them, that they're vulnerable in some way, that they're not like totally independent, totally self-independent. Like, so some people have the pathology where they have to be totally the authority of everything, in the sense that they can't ask other people for help, they can't like listen to these types of advice because it makes them feel very vulnerable and very insecure. They have to always be right in everything they do, and everything else from that they will just cut off and avoid. So this, like, working on themselves would be too vulnerable. Like, so just look in yourself now. If, like me being supportive of Ekhart Tolle and you feeling more vulnerable, just see what's happening in the body. No, but there is no body. That is true, but the good chance that you're going there in this moment is because it makes you feel very vulnerable. So the rejection of it, like, just feel that rejection of it and see what's underneath that rejection of it. Like, why am I rejecting this so so strongly, aversely? It might be because you feel like they're wrong. But if you really understood oneness, like, nothing's right, so why would you have such a strong feeling to someone being wrong? Like, it doesn't matter, it's only words. Somebody's going to lead you astray. So then there's this fear of other people that they're going to lead you astray. Like, you know better than other people. They're not as intelligent as you. They don't know as much as you. You're more well-read. You might not be able to get to that thought easily. It's these people tend to be, in psychology, what I would call more avoidant personalities. They avoid making strong relationships with people because it's too vulnerable for them. So they avoid it in this, like, rejection of, like, no. Not wanting to be helped by others, intimate by others, but they wouldn't know they're being like that because they would be avoiding it. But everyone else can see it from the outside. It's like the ones in the YouTube chat that's trying to teach everybody else in the YouTube chat. They tend to be the avoidant ones. No, Lisa, you don't understand. You are a bad teacher. I have to help other people in this because otherwise all these other people will be led astray by your bad teaching and Ekhart Tolle's bad teaching. Right. But if you really listen to me, I'm not saying there is one teaching. So you can disagree with the way I teach, but that energy, that fighting energy, like, why not just switch off? Why not go to somebody else that's, like, more resonates with you? The fighting energy is there because it's like your defense, it's your pattern. I can't be vulnerable. Must fight anyone that tries to make me vulnerable or make me think I'm vulnerable. And then they make an identity out of that. And what is it that's beyond all of that? Like, why does all of that matter? So you've got these feelings arising, these thoughts arising, and that's the illusion. What else is happening in the experience beyond that? Nothing, and that nothing is terrifying. Not being you, not knowing what's happening, not understanding what's happening intellectually is terrifying. Not being able to put it into nice categories of good teacher, bad teacher is terrifying. Terrifying. Then you've got the other extremes. You've got the characters that are so desperate for somebody to lead them because that's their identity. They need a leader. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just looking again like what's happening here. I get onto Ekhart Tolle's and like hold on and won't let go. He must love me. He must see me. I must be the best student. Okay, let's go on to another quote. To love is to recognize yourself in another. Yes, yes. And what I suspect he means by yourself is who you truly are, which is this undefinable moment, this undefinable experiencing, which is everywhere, this oceanic oneness that's only here. Here. I get so excited talking about this. Today I'm actually a little bit sleepy, but then this comes on and bah! This is fantastic. Time isn't precious at all because it is an illusion. What you perceive as precious is not time, but the one point that is out of time, the now. That is precious indeed. The more you are focused on time, past and future, the more you will miss the now, the more precious things there is, the most precious thing there is. Beautiful. Time isn't precious at all. And society is absolutely convinced that time is the most precious thing there is. It's like aging is a disaster. Woman going to... No, sorry, that was going off on one. I was going to make a joke. But people are terrified of aging. They're terrified of losing time, but you never lose time because you're always here. Everything just seems to change and evolve. But actually, when you really, really get into this moment, without you, where is this past? Where is this younger version of you or older version of you? You're only ever what you are now. Isn't that right, Khaleesi? This is what... To go back to see what we see. So with Khaleesi, you can see up my nose now. My wonderful nose. So with Khaleesi, hello, Yi. You can all view what a mess my room is. Hello, Khaleesi. Khaleesi, can I just ask you a question? Okay, sorry. Okay, you carry on sleeping. But I'm just going to pretend you're not sleeping and that you're awake. Khaleesi, can I just ask you, how old are you? F off. Okay, thank you. I'm sleeping. Okay, thank you. But just going away from doing her voice and impressions, does Khaleesi think she is old or young? Does she have any sense of aging, of losing time? Does she think, oh man, today I've been so sleepy and I haven't had a good day and I'm unhappy? Like she never has that moment of like, oh, I've got 15 years to live and I have to make this exceptional effort to have the most miraculous, better than everybody else 15 years. She's just like whatever she is in the moment, and she's always ecstatic to be whatever she is in the moment. She's just here. Here I am. And it's the same for us. And this is like one of the fundamental sufferings of humans, is this idea that they're alive and that they have to be happy. So it's like I even read a scientific report, like people that are trying to enjoy something often enjoy it like 10 times less. So you get born, you got to have the family, you got to do all these things, the job, and then you got to be happy in all of it. And people are like, hi, have a good day. Jazz hands. And this is an impossibility. How could this happen? You're only ever now. The most important thing is this moment, is what's happening now. Like everything else is illusory. Every thought, every feeling, every idea, memories, future plans is illusory. What you have is now, always. And this precludes a person, because where is the person but time bound? I think I used to love that Tony said, that I don't know if he still says it, is me is in time, in English at least. I don't know, Zeit. I don't think that works in other languages, but you see, T-I-M-E, me is in time. So in this moment, where are you? Where is this separate entity that's experiencing the world? If you really go into the experiencing of this moment, there is no world and there is no you. There is only what is, which is absolute mystery. And this waking up, this experiencing, will shift the physiology of the body. I feel if I didn't get into this subject, my character would have gone on to be a bit of a nightmare. She's still, you know, funky. She's not the most like good at hunting in the you know like in this society and like doing the everyday things, but she does it. But I feel like this character would have been so much more difficult if that awakening hadn't happened. In that awakening, you know, all these other extra useless thoughts sort of disappeared and the character relaxed a lot. But she still has issues. I'm not trying to make out that she's perfect, and there's always a possible expansion. I can lose my rag to the call center. You know, when you're on the call center to people for hours and hours, and then they hang up on you and you phone back, and then you have to go through it again, and then you put it onto another department, another one, and hang up, and when you spent hours, I can lose my rag in the end. Like, hello, I know you're a new person, you haven't heard what's happened so far. Okay, to the next quote of Ekhart Tolle. Where are the quotes? Here they are. Here they are. Do, 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 do. Life isn't as serious as the mind makes it out to be. That's for sure. I have lived with several Zen masters, all of them cats. Life is the dancer and you are the dance. That's very Ramesh style. Anything that you resent and strongly react to in another is also in you. I mean, like anything that you react to in another can only be you, because you can only see the physiology of this brain. So, you know, if somebody in front of you is shouting, your brain has to be able to interpret that. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to interpret it. So a slug wouldn't be able to interpret that. It would, like, someone would be shouting and it would be no different to them not shouting. So, and everyone will have different relationships to that. So if you grew up in a family where there's lots of shouting, then it might not be a big deal, because maybe you in your childhood got love through shouting and through aggression. So, it's different to somebody that never experienced shouting before. So the relationship to the shouting will be very different. So I would, like, the way everything you see in another in the world is the brain popping chemistry, or the body popping chemistry, or like a chemical reaction happening, and none of it is reality. However, as humans, we have this collective reality, and we all sort of kind of live in this collective reality, and those that don't, we call mentally ill, or an animal, or an insect, or cognitively impaired or something. So a bee would be seeing this room, or a fly or a slug would be experiencing this room completely different to the way a human does. But humans have this collective reality where we name things and we name scenarios, and then we all share in naming it the same thing, and we have sort of these similar experiences and interpretations of situations. So if someone's being angry in a certain way, we might all collectively agree that that's something that's abusive, but it's always debatable because it's collective reality that's not a fixed thing and changeable, subject to change. So I'm not trying to say, if you've been raped by somebody, that it's and you're really upset about it, that it's you raping you in a way as the absolute is, but on the human level, we can name that as abusive, and that person did a bad thing, and that is really horrible experience, but it's not the fact, and it's not the absolute way it is, and it's not absolutely real. But it's important for our sanity that we all name it collectively, especially with like something terrible like rape. But like, if you didn't have interpretations of that, it wouldn't be rape. But I'm not saying that as in justifying it in any way. It's just our way of justifying that and saying what that is. That is rape. Him raping her without consent. But we know, like in dogs, that happens, but we don't call it rape. It's that's hard to explain, eh? That can be very confusing, and it, like, for me, it sent me through a very passive stage. I was always very ethical, and then I got to this, and I felt like I had to give up my ethics, which is a really good phase to go through. But it also made me really susceptible to tolerate and accept people's bad behavior, because I thought it was a projection of my mind, or I thought I had to change my mind, or I saw it as illusory in some way. And a lot of people go through that stage, and that seems to have relevance because we all seem to go through it, but it can be a bit dangerous. For me, it was a bit dangerous. I went a bit too far with that, and got a little bit of trauma, and maybe caused trauma to other people. But this is the difficulty when you're an explorer, which all of us are. We're not sticking with just the collective reality and what the collective says is the right thing to do. We're all exploring outside of the box. This is only for typically open-minded people, or people that have had extreme stress. But in the exploration of this, as we break down boundaries and explore, there's going to be times when we trip over and tumble and make mistakes, and the best that we can do is when we get up and we see the mistake, we go, I'm sorry, with also knowing that it couldn't have been any other way, and also that it didn't happen, but you apologize because you understand that that is the most functional way humans can interact. And it's also, you feel this as well, you don't want other people ultimately to hurt because of your mistakes, but it's what happens. Love is not selective, just as the light of the sun is not selective. It does not make one person special. It is not exclusive. Exclusivity is not the love of God, but the love of ego. However, the intensity with which true love is felt can vary. There may be one person who reflects your love back to you more clearly and more intensely than others. And if that person feels the same towards you, it can be said that you are in a love relationship with him or her. The bond that connects you with that person is the same bond that connects you with the person sitting next to you on the bus, or with a bird, a tree, a flower. Only the degree of intensity with which it felt differs. Beautiful. Beautiful. So the way that I would phrase that is that like being in love with somebody, there is the chemical reaction of being in love where you want to create babies, but like truly being in love with someone is like seeing them as who they truly are, which is nothing. And that is the same with everything. Everything is nothing, but you can have the experience with one person where it can be expressed. So you can really express that nothingness with that other person. And that is very individual as to why objects, two particular people, get drawn to each other. Yeah. Another way I would say it is that when you fall in love with someone, the seeking stops and then the oneness can be revealed. Like you no longer want to be anywhere, so there's just this oneness. Okay, I'll do one more, and then I will move on to questions. Yeah, this is maybe his best quote. I love this quote. Death is a stripping away of all that is not you. The secret of life is to die before you die and find that there is no death. Yeah. Death is a stripping away of all that is not you. The secret of life is to die before you die and find that there is no death. So that's going back to the awakening experience that I explained that was similar to Ekhart Tolle's, and what I say the awakening experience is that there comes a point where there is a collapsing of everything you think you know you are and a going beyond the intellect to the original. It's like everything's stripped away and you're back to the original source of what you are, the sourcey source. And yeah, you can call it death. Like in that oneness experience, there's absolutely no you. There is no world, there is no anything. And that never dies, that was never alive. It can never die. It is this. It is mystery, it is unknown, and it's the most intimate sense of being. And everybody has it. I don't have it more than you or the next person. The only difference is that in the next person, they might believe that they are a subject in an objective world. Okay, so 2 questions